Jack Coleman, the 48-year-old founder of Burger Barn, never imagined that the brutal truth about his company would come crashing down on him while he was just another face in line. He had built Burger Barn from scratch, a humble family-run eatery that once echoed with laughter, sizzling grills, and a sense of unity. Over time, it transformed into a sprawling franchise empire with over 400 locations across the country. Jack took pride in the values that formed its backbone: quality ingredients, heartfelt customer service, and above all, treating every employee as if they were part of his extended family. But somewhere along the journey, as numbers climbed and quarterly reports replaced handwritten notes, a growing distance crept in, one Jack hadn't truly noticed until now. Whispers of discontent had started trickling through the corporate grapevine. High turnover rates, burnout, a noticeable decline in customer service quality. Emails and filtered reports sugarcoated the truth. But Jack knew if he wanted the real story, he would need to hear it himself. And so he did something radical. With the help of a professional Hollywood makeup artist, Jack became someone else entirely. Dan, a wary, silver-habed retiree in search of a part-time job to stay busy, the transformation was uncanny. His once smooth features were buried beneath prosthetics that gave him a more aged, weathered look. The wig peppered with gray, the carefully placed wrinkles, the glasses. They all worked together to erase the founder and reveal the everyman. No one would question him. In a corporate behemoth like Burger Barn, most employees never saw a higher-up, let alone recognized one. Jack picked a location in a suburban area he'd never visited before and with minimal effort got hired on the spot. The manager barely looked up from her clipboard. They were desperate. He was available. That was enough. On his first day behind the counter, Jack felt a strange blend of excitement and anxiety. His hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with the register, the digital buttons foreign and overwhelming. The lunch rush hit like a tidal wave. Hungry customers packed the front, orders piled high, and the back line buzzed with frantic energy. But it wasn't the chaos that froze him in place. It was a voice, sharp, bitter, and heartbreakingly familiar. A young cashier, no older than 20, slammed a tray onto the counter with frustration etched across her face. "I can't stand this place," she muttered to her coworker, just loud enough for Jack to hear. "Management doesn't give a damn. They just dump more shifts on us and expect us to shut up about it. And don't even get me started on what happens if you ask for time off." Jack's gut twisted. He kept his eyes down, pretending to focus on his training, but every word sliced through him. Another employee, a lanky, tired-looking kid named Kyle, leaned in and whispered back, "Yeah, I asked about my schedule last week and she laughed, told me if I didn't like it I could quit." Just like that. The girl, Maya, according to her name tag, rolled her eyes. "They don't care about us, Kyle. We're disposable. They wouldn't notice if we vanished tomorrow." It was a gut punch. These weren't lazy kids whining about minor inconveniences. They were overworked, disillusioned, and desperately holding on to any sense of dignity they had left. And the worst part? They weren't alone. Throughout the day, Jack heard more quiet confessions. A line cook griped about the fryer being broken for weeks. A shift lead admitted to skipping breaks just to keep the store running. The picture was clear, and it was bleak. During his break, Jack sat silently in the cramped, fluorescent-lit employee room, sipping a lukewarm bottle of water. Around him, the staff sprawled in exhaustion. Maya scrolled through her phone, her brow furrowed in irritation. Kyle leaned against a microwave, heating up a cup of instant soup, his posture slouched, eyes dull. "Hey," Jack said, his voice casual, masking the storm inside. "How long have you been here?" Kyle barely glanced up. 6 months. Feels like 6 years. Maya let out a dry laugh. "That's how it goes. Most people don't last a month. They burn out and bounce." "Weighs that?" Jack asked, gently pressing. She looked at him like he'd just asked if the sky was blue. Because it's hell, pays garbage, hours are worse, and management? Her expression hardened. Last week I had a full-on panic attack from the stress. You know what my manager said? Can you finish your shift first? Like I wasn't even human. Jack's throat tightened. He wanted to defend what Burger Barn was supposed to be. He wanted to say, this isn't the company I built. It's not who we are. But he stayed quiet. Because in that moment, it was clear. These weren't exaggerations. They were realities, raw and unfiltered, and Jack couldn't look away anymore. As Jack drove home that night, the weight of the day pressed against his chest like a boulder. The harsh words, the hollow gazes, the silent cries for help hidden behind strained smiles, all of it played on a loop in his mind. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white with a blend of anger, sorrow, and something far more unsettling, self-doubt. How had he, the man who started Burger Barn with the dream of creating a better workplace, become so detached from its painful reality? It wasn't just disappointment that gripped him, it was shame. Deep, biting shame. Somewhere along the line, in the whirlwind of scaling up and expanding, he'd traded in family values for profit margins. And now, the people who made the business run were being driven into the ground. These weren't just employees, they were humans with dreams, burdens, and families of their own. Jack parked in his driveway and sat there in silence, staring out at the familiar porch lights of his home. He realized then that he couldn't just return to his role behind a desk. No boardroom decision or quarterly report could fix what was broken. This time, he would go deeper, see everything, feel everything, and do whatever it took to fix it. The next morning, Jack arrived early, the air crisp with determination. As soon as he walked in, Denise, the manager whose sharpness wasn't just in her tone but in her complete lack of empathy, started barking orders from behind her clipboard. Dan, don't just stand there, stock the napkins and wipe the drink station, and hustle before the lunch rush hits, she snapped, not sparing him a glance. Jack murmured a yes ma'am, keeping his eyes down, his stomach already churning. From the corner of his eye, he watched Denise pace back into her office, phone glued to her ear as she grumbled about being short-staffed again. It was the same pattern all over again. She didn't engage, she didn't lead, she just sat back and barked, lording over her staff like they were burdens to be endured rather than teammates to be guided. Meanwhile, Maya and Kyle were carrying the weight of the front line, taking orders, cleaning up spills, managing frustrated customers, all while Denise's voice crackled through the headset, cutting through the air with criticism. By mid-morning, Jack found a rare moment of calm, and with it, a chance to speak with Maya again. She was wiping down tables, moving quickly but with a kind of efficiency that only came from doing the same exhausting routine day after day. Maya, Jack said softly, you seem to know this place inside and out. Do you ever get any recognition for everything you do? She paused, startled by the question. Then she let out a hollow laugh, the kind that hides more pain than humor. Recognition. Please. Denise doesn't even know half the stuff we keep together. She only shows up when something's wrong, and then it's just yelling. Jack frowned. So she doesn't ever help? Help? Maya scoffed. She hides in that office like it's a fortress. If we didn't pick up the slack every shift, this place would be a disaster zone. Her words hit Jack like a hammer. This wasn't just poor management. It was toxic neglect, and the consequences were written all over Maya's tired face. Have you ever thought about leaving? He asked carefully. She gave a bitter smile. Of course. Every day. But I can't. My mom's sick. I'm covering her meds. This job's a lifeline. She hesitated, then added, Kyle's already looking. He's just done. Jack felt something shift inside him. These weren't disposable workers. They were people making sacrifices just to survive. Their lives didn't pause at the time clock. Then came the moment that cracked the surface completely. During the lunch rush, chaos erupted. Orders flew in, the kitchen was slammed, and the team was fraying at the edges. In the middle of it, Kyle, rushing to plate a burger, dropped it. It hit the ground with a dull splat, sauce splattering across the tile. Denise burst from the back like a storm cloud. "Kyle, are you kidding me? That's coming out of your paycheck." The entire restaurant froze. "I didn't mean to," Kyle muttered, red-faced. "I don't care," she snapped. "You're costing us money. Maybe if you spent more time working and less time whining about your hours." Jack couldn't stay silent. Something in him rose up. "It was an accident," he said firmly. "He's doing his best." Denise turned to him with venom. "And who the hell are you to tell me how to run this store? You've been here, what, 2 days? Stay in your lane, Dan." The dining room buzzed with tension. Customers whispered, some visibly uncomfortable. Kyle stood frozen, humiliated. Maya stared at the floor, jaw clenched. Jack wanted to scream, but he didn't. Not yet. He couldn't blow his cover, not until he had a plan. That shift dragged on in thick silence. Denise disappeared back into her office, but the damage was done. Kyle looked like the wind had been knocked out of him. Maya's face was a mix of fury and heartbreak. When Jack's shift ended, he didn't drive home. He just sat in his car, staring out at the building, jaw tight. He had seen enough. It was time to act. The next morning, Jack showed up again, only this time, he wasn't alone. 2 trusted regional managers from corporate quietly arrived with him, blending in as curious customers. They knew about his mission, had been briefed, and were ready to observe. It wasn't just about saving one store anymore. It was about saving the soul of the company he had built with his bare hands. By midday, after closely watching the staff hustle under pressure while being micromanaged into exhaustion, Jack had seen enough. The disparity between what he had envisioned Burger Barn to be and what it had become was now undeniable. His pulse steady, his purpose crystal clear. He marched toward the back office where Denise sat buried in her routine, detached, dismissive, and utterly unaware that her reckoning was moments away. "Denise," Jack said firmly as he stepped inside. She didn't even glance up. "Can it wait? I'm busy." "No," he replied, removing his glasses and pulling off the wig that had concealed his identity. "It can't." Denise froze, her fingers slipped from the keyboard, eyes locking onto Jack's real face. Color drained from her cheeks. Then Coleman," she stammered. "That's right," he said, crossing his arms. "And I've seen enough to know this store is being run nothing like it should be." Her lips parted, desperate to explain, but Jack raised a hand to cut her off. "Save it. We'll talk later. Right now, I need you to gather the entire team. I have something to say to all of them." Minutes later, the employees stood huddled in the dining area, some still in uniforms, others with mop buckets or order slips in hand. Uncertainty clouded their faces as Jack stepped forward, his disguise gone, his voice clear and resolute. "I'm Jack Coleman," he began, "the founder of Burger Barn. For the past 3 days, I've worked among you, undercover, to see with my own eyes what's happening inside this store." He paused, letting his words sink in. Some jaws dropped. Maya blinked, stunned. Kyle looked like he'd just seen a ghost. "What I've seen," Jack continued, "has been heartbreaking. This company was founded on treating employees like family, and somewhere along the way we lost that. That's on me, and I want to begin by saying, I'm sorry." He scanned their faces, feeling the weight of their silence. Today, Jack turned to Maya and Kyle, their expressions still laced with disbelief. "Maya, Kyle, you've held this place together through chaos, stress, and neglect. Starting today, you're both getting well-deserved raises, and I'll personally make sure your schedules reflect your needs, whether it's school, family, or your well-being." Kyle's eyes widened. "Wait, seriously?" Jack gave him a warm smile. "Seriously?" Then Jack turned back to the crowd. "As for Denise, there will be an investigation into her conduct. Effective immediately, she's suspended." Denise's jaw tightened. She looked around, outnumbered and exposed, but said nothing. Jack continued. "From this day forward, we're implementing company-wide changes. Regular equipment inspections, anonymous employee feedback systems, and leadership training for every manager. Mandatory." For a beat, the room stood still, caught between hope and disbelief. Then Maya's voice broke the silence. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jack met her eyes. "No, thank you. You reminded me what this company was meant to be." As the team dispersed, something shifted in the air. A heaviness lifted. Smiles, tentative but real, began to emerge. Jack stood there for a moment longer, knowing this was just the beginning. But finally, it felt like the beginning of something right. The following week was a whirlwind of transformation. Jack hadn't walked away from that store with just a renewed sense of purpose. He walked away with a plan. Corporate operations adjusted overnight. Regional managers took over the struggling location, implementing structural changes. But Jack knew real change couldn't just come from the top. So, a few days later, he returned to the store. No disguise, no wig, no mask, just Jack Coleman, the man who had once believed in building something better. When he entered, heads turned. A ripple of recognition spread through the team. Though many looked relieved, there was still caution in their eyes. Change, after all, was still just a promise until it took root. Kyle was at the register, and something about him had changed. He stood a little straighter, spoke a little clearer. He spotted Jack and gave a small, tentative wave. "Hi, Mr. Coleman." Jack smiled. "Just Jack. How's today going?" Kyle hesitated, then nodded. "It's better. A lot better, actually. The regional guys have been great. And, well, Denise isn't here. That's helped." "Good to hear," Jack said. "But I'm not just here to check in. When you and Maya have a break, I'd love a few minutes of your time." Kyle nodded eagerly. "Yeah, sure. I'll get her." Moments later, Maya and Kyle joined Jack at one of the back tables. Jack had chosen a quiet window, intentionally avoiding the lunch rush. He didn't want this conversation rushed or diluted by distractions. Maya sat cautiously, arms crossed, still guarded. "Okay, what's this about?" she asked, not unkindly, but clearly protective of her time and heart. Jack leaned in, speaking with sincerity. "I wanted to thank you both again. You didn't just help hold this store together. You opened my eyes. You were honest, even when you had no idea who I was. That kind of courage changes things." Maya raised a skeptical brow. "So, Denise, is she gone?" Jack's expression turned serious. "She's still suspended. We're doing a full investigation. I won't make promises I can't keep, but if she can't prove she can lead with respect, she won't be back." Kyle looked down, nodding. Jack continued. "I also had HR review both your files. Your raises have already been processed. Kyle, you'll have the option to reduce your hours if you need to focus on school or other priorities." Kyle blinked. "Wait, really?" "Really," Jack confirmed. Then he turned to Maya. "And Maya, I see leadership in you. You've been doing a manager's job without the pay or title. I want to change that. If you're interested, I'll personally support your leadership training and career growth here. Whatever you need." Maya stared at him, stunned. For a long moment she said nothing. Then a dry ha-ha laugh escaped her. "Wow." Okay, I'll think about it. Jack smiled, appreciating her measured response. Good. Take your time. Just know that whatever you decide, we're building a better burger barn. And it starts with people like you. Their moment was gently interrupted by the sound of the kitchen door swinging open. An older cook named Lewis stepped out, apron stained, hands damp from the sink. "Mr. Coleman?" he asked hesitantly. Jack turned, ready to hear the next story, because he knew every voice mattered now. Jack turned to Lewis with a calm nod. Of course. The older man motioned discreetly for Jack to follow him into the kitchen. As the door swung shut behind them, the noise of the front counter faded, leaving behind a quiet, almost sacred stillness between two people who had carried far too much for far too long. "I've been with Burger Barn for over 10 years, Lewis began, his voice low, fragile. "I've seen managers come and go, but Denise..." He hesitated, as if saying it aloud gave it more weight. "She didn't just yell. She broke people, humiliated them. I stayed quiet for years because I thought no one was listening, no one cared. But seeing you here, working like one of us, it gave me hope." Jack swallowed hard, a lump rising in his throat. "Lewis," he said gently, "I'm truly sorry you went through that. No one should feel silenced. No one should be afraid to speak the truth." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded document. "We're launching an anonymous employee hotline. Every team member will be able to speak up directly to corporate, without fear of retaliation. We're making it permanent." Lewis let out a long breath, his shoulders easing for the first time in a while. That's good. Real good." As Jack left the store that day, sunlight warmed his skin, but it was the fire within him that kept him moving. He'd made promises. Now it was time to deliver on them. Over the next month, Jack led a massive transformation. New company worldwide policies rolled out. Every manager across the Burger Barn chain had to complete leadership training, with a strong emphasis on emotional intelligence, active listening, and employee wellness. Equipment budgets were restructured, making sure no store had to operate with broken tools. For Jack, these weren't just operational changes, they were commitments to human dignity. He didn't delegate these reforms from behind a boardroom table. He got in his car and drove, store to store, team to team, this time without a disguise. He wanted to shake hands, listen to stories, rebuild trust in person. Then back at the suburban location, the spark that ignited it all, real change was blooming. Maya had stepped into a mentorship role with grace and drive, absorbing everything with the focus of someone determined to rewrite her future. Kyle thrived under his adjusted schedule, his confidence blossoming in ways that touched everyone around him. Even Lewis, the steady soul of the kitchen, had a lightness in his step as he hummed and flipped burgers. One afternoon, Jack walked into the store unannounced, and what he saw stopped him in his tracks. Maya, guiding a new hire, spoke with steady assurance, her voice calm, clear, supportive. Kyle stood at the register, handling a growing line of customers with poise. Lewis, back in the kitchen, was whistling a tune, his expression more peaceful than Jack had ever seen it. Jack exhaled deeply. For the first time in years, he didn't just see workers, he saw a team, a family, finally breathing again. 2 months later, Jack sat alone in a quiet conference room at headquarters. The table before him was littered with thick reports, feedback summaries, and satisfaction data. He ran a hand through his hair, exhausted, yes, but clearer than ever. The numbers confirmed what his heart had already felt. Turnover was down, morale was up, but one matter still lingered like an unanswered question in the back of his mind. Denise. The investigation was complete. The findings were grim. Multiple employees confirmed verbal abuse, favoritism, and managerial neglect. Yet her record before that store had been impeccable. Years of strong reviews, recognition, and stellar metrics. She wasn't a simple villain. She was a leader who had crumbled under pressure and failed her people. Jack knew the next step wasn't just disciplinary, it had to be redemptive. That afternoon, he called Denise in for a meeting. She arrived wearing a brave face, but Jack could see the shift. The sharp confidence was gone. In its place was something raw, anxiety, humility. She clutched her purse like a lifeline as she sat across from him. "Denise," Jack began, steady but kind. "Thank you for coming. Let's get right to it. The investigation is done, and the truth is, there were serious concerns. The way you treated your staff, the absentee leadership, the way issues were left unresolved. That's not who we are." Denise flinched, but didn't speak. Jack leaned in slightly. "Instead, he continued, I don't believe you're beyond redemption. I've reviewed your history, you're capable, but I also believe the role overwhelmed you. So here's what I'm offering." Her eyes lifted, surprised. "You're being reassigned. A smaller store, lower volume. You'll undergo full leadership retraining and work under a mentor for 6 months. If you show growth, real, visible change, there will be a path back. But hear me clearly. If I receive even one more complaint, that's it. No second chances." Denise sat in silence, processing. Then, finally, she exhaled. Her shoulders dropped. "Thank you, Mr. Coleman. I won't let you down again." "I hope not," Jack said. "And Denise, remember, these people aren't numbers. They are the backbone of Burger Barn. Lead them with the respect they deserve." A week later, Jack returned to the suburban store. As he stepped inside, the once heavy air had transformed. It was brighter, warmer, alive with a new kind of energy. Maya was on the floor, confidently directing the team. Her voice, once tight with frustration, now rang out with assurance. Kyle, still manning the register, had a sense of ease in his posture. "Maya," Jack called gently as he approached. She turned, and her face lit up. "Jack, what brings you back?" "Just checking in," he smiled. "But it looks like you've got everything handled." She shrugged with a grin she couldn't hide. "Things are good. The team's clicking. And those policy changes, game changers. The anonymous hotline, brilliant. People feel safe now." Jack nodded. "And you? How are you adjusting to the interim manager role?" "It's a lot," she admitted. "But I like it. I feel like I finally have a voice." "Well then," Jack said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out an envelope. "It's time we made it official." She blinked. "What?" "Corporate approved your promotion. Congratulations, Maya. You're now the official store manager." Her jaw dropped. She looked at him, stunned. Then slowly a wide, grateful smile stretched across her face. "Wow. Okay. Thank you. Seriously." Jack turned to Kyle, who had been watching from behind the counter. "And Kyle," he said, "I haven't forgotten you. HR tells me you're starting college soon?" Kyle blushed. "Yeah, just part-time. Well, we're launching an education assistance program. Starting next semester, Burger Barn will help cover your tuition." Kyle's eyes went wide. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Jack replied with a grin. As he stepped back outside, the sun dipped behind the clouds, casting a soft golden hue over the parking lot. Jack paused, gazing back at the storefront. The past few months had been the hardest of his career. Messy, painful, revealing, but they had also been the most transformative. He had rediscovered what mattered. He had rebuilt bridges that should never have been allowed to burn. Burger Barn wasn't perfect, not yet, but it was healing, and Jack Coleman knew this much. He would never again forget the ground floor, because that's where the soul of his company lived. and from that ground they would rise together.